Hello there, welcome. Today I'm going to talk about Gladiator 2 for What the Hell Is This? Now this is a film that I wasn't looking forward to. I thought it was going to be mediocre. I'd seen the trailers and none of them looked amazing. They looked like you're doing a sequel that was very similar to the original. So it didn't look that fresh, but I was like, okay, I want to give it benefit of the doubt. I want it to be entertaining at least. So I took my nephew to see it. We both watched it and we're like, what are we watching? What is this? So yeah, it wasn't just me who hated it, and I've talked to another friend who hated it as well. And it's just, I think, and just generally around from what I've seen, the best this film's getting is, it's okay. There's a few people I know who really liked it, but most, no. I just hated it. I just thought it was so bad. It really was an 80s sequel. And I'm starting to think Ridley Scott should avoid sequels, because his idea of a sequel is the 80s stuff, where it's like, it basically is like a slight remix of the original, and you change up a few things, but you stick to certain beats, and you don't really stretch yourself. But this one is just diabolically dull. The main problem with this film is there's no centre to it, because Paul Mescal is Lucius, who's a kid in the first one, grown up. And he's a good actor, but you've thrown out a young actor into this film who has never done an action movie before. And you get scenes where he delivers when there's dialogue scenes, where he actually gets to emote a little bit. But a lot of the time he's learning on the job how to do an action movie. And I'm sure once he gets below his feet, he'll be fine doing that, because he is a good actor. But he didn't know how to command the screen the way that Russell Crowe did. And that was just a case of Crowe had done a lot more films in that kind of genre before. He'd worked with Sam Raimi before Gladiator. He'd done like LA Confidential before Gladiator. He'd done a lot of films. He'd even done action movies like Virtuosity, which wasn't very good. But he'd done a lot of stuff he'd learned how to move on camera and what worked, what didn't work physically. And he knew how to create attitude. And this one, there's no attitude. It's also, a lot of it's a writing. It's like, because Mescal's doing what he's told. And he's not meant to be another Maximus character. He's a guy who's struggling with who is he and what happened to his past. And the big problem with this film is the backstory is so tawdry and so stupid, and why he's in this mess in the first place makes so little sense that once you find it out, it's like, that's the excuse for this whole film. What? It's that dumb. It's so dumb. The excuse is, at the end of the first one, they sent Lucius away, even though he'd become the emperor, because they were scared people would kill him. Even though he was about to they were going to give the leadership back to the Senate, and he would just be a figurehead, really. Especially until he came into his own later. He was going to be a figurehead, and that's what the end of the first film was. And it's like, well, why would he be scared he was going to be killed if he was only going to be a figurehead? It makes no sense, and they don't ever understand. And until he's been chased all around Europe because he's the heir to the throne of Rome, and they try to kill him. Even these Romans try to kill him, because obviously there's other people who want the throne, even though they're not of blood relation to the other characters from the first film. And it's like, if there's a way to set it up, you could have set it up like this was going on in the background, and it could have been carefully set up. But I think it would still have been tawdry and stupid. But it was one of those things I needed real care. If you're going to do that, it really needed a lot of care. And what it did not need was a sense of this is a big mystery. Because everyone knows it's Lucius in the first one. Everyone knows who he is in the first one. So there's no mystery to who he is. But they've tried to treat it as if it's a mystery, even though we all know as an audience who he is. And by treating a mystery means you can't get into the details of why certain things happened. So everything becomes shoehorned into an explanation later on that makes no sense. And it's like, So if you don't have that basic knowledge of what happened and why it's happening, when you get to the character, you have no base for who the character actually is now. It's just like a guy who's vague, who's struggling with things that are vague, and the things that are vague are actually stupid, so you don't really have much respect for the character. And the rest of the film's falling apart around him anyway, so what does it matter? I mean, the big problem with this is an action movie with lots of action where none of the action is motivated. There's only one fight in the film that's motivated, and that lasts a whole minute. It's just so dull. The whole film's dull. So it starts off with the same thing of your hero's betrayed. In this one, he's now living in an African city that's attacked by Rome. His wife is killed in the first 10 minutes of the film. There's a big action scene that it's just so dull, and it feels like they've just shot a lot of footage and that's edited put together in some way, because there's no motivation for anything really. It's just like they're trying to defend the city, but there's no character beats that actually make you care about anybody. It's just like very basic setup, and then they fight, and it's like, well, why are they fighting? Because it's a fight scene. But why should I care? Because it's a fight scene. And that's the film. That's the film all the way through. Why should I care? Because. Why? Because. It's painful to watch because it's like there's so little there. I mean, and that's the big problem with Ridley Scott as a director and his entire career is the fact that he's very limited to scripts, and he thinks he's a writer and he's not. And that's the big thing is that if you give him a good script and say follow the script or follow that story, and you can adjust certain things and on the fly if you need to adjust for an actor, but follow the story. His biggest successes have been like The Martian, or the original Gladiator, or Alien, where he's had a script, or Thelma and Louise, where he's had a script that's like, follow this script. Another Macintosh Man, another good one, where he had a script he had to follow, and it was like, he wasn't developing the script, it was like, it'd been developed before he got there, and he was like, you follow that. And they work. When he's in the development of a project, it becomes much more diffuse. I mean, Blade Runner has lots of good qualities, but a great narrative it is not. His career in the 80s and 90s, when he got a bit more control of the scripts, led to stuff like Legend, led to stuff like 1492, and a lot of films that were just very vague narratives that had no high points and low points, were just lots of pretty images. And it was that thing of, he can't tell a story unless someone takes charge of the storytelling. He can do a lot of other stuff, but he can't do that. Then in 2000s, he had a couple of hits in a row, which were Gladiator, Hannibal, which is based on a novel, which they kind of trashed some of, but the actual narrative of the novel still kept it on the rails. And Black Hawk Down, which is based on an actual real event. And then he went back off to this wandering around doing these weird films. I mean, there was Kingdom of Heaven, which is a good film on the longer cut. And the short cut is unwatchable, and the long cut is much better. But it's still a thing of, he's a good writer writing it, and even in the longer cut, it doesn't have the greatest narrative, but the atmosphere is really good. But there's been lots of films. Have you seen this Alien prequels, Prometheus and Alien Covenant, where he was in charge of the scripting a lot of time. He brought writers in, but we watched it behind the scenes, he was in charge of the direction things went. He's now trying to backtrack and say he wasn't, but he was. Everyone knows he was. And those films were very vague. And, a lot of recent films have not done well critically. There's been a sense of this a director on the downward slope. We look at Robin Hood film, which had a lot of nice elements, but it was based on a rip-off of Robin and Marion. But again, it had no narrative to speak of. It was just like, they took a script, they changed all the script, and basically had a script without narrative. A story without real narrative progression. It was just like, you luckily good actors who could fill in some of the blanks. And he was arrogant enough to say there was never been a good Robin Hood movie, even though there has been plenty. And And it's this thing with him is like, it's just tedium a lot of the time because he can't tell a story unless someone does it for him. In this film, you get a narrative that's just not there. There's no ability to build one. And you have lots of plotting, but nothing that lands because there's no stakes to anything. It's just like these things happen. You have Denzel Washington as probably the best part of the film because he's just having it up as the villain who's manipulating everybody. And he works out best because whatever film he thinks he's in is a better film than the film you're watching. You know, it's that kind of performances. I'll ignore this film. I'm in a better film. You used to go away. Everyone else, Pedro Pascal, Connie Nielsen for the first one, they're doing their best, but they're getting nothing parts. Parts are very basic characters, and they're doing what they can, but everyone's character is suggested by a line or two, and then you have all these other bits of dialogue that float all over the place, and all these other plot threads that go nowhere. They have no real weight or meaning, and it's like trying to do twist after twist after twist, and none of the twists make sense, and they're all exhausting. And in between that, you're going to have this hero rising story that the hero's not that interesting, and he's stuck with a backstory that makes no sense, and it's stupid, and an actor who is still learning on the job, and he doesn't seem to be much help the director. And you've all these action scenes, so you're not really invested in the character. And you've all these action scenes that meant to build them up, but they're just very much larger versions of action scenes than the first one. But there's no primal thing. The first one, it was a revenge story. Maximus was going for revenge on the Emperor. And that was the thing that kept it going. And every scene, that was the thing, and there was stuff about the Roman politics in the background. This one, there was politics before the foreground, and the character development in the background. So basically, everything that was the worst about the first film is now the main thing, and everything that was best about the first film is now treated to a scene or two. And you have characters who are falling out, like Lucius and his mother falling out for one scene, and then they're back together again in the next scene. And it's like, I don't see how where the jump came. Like, Pedro Pascal and Connie Nielsen are both killed off in the film in gratuitous ways that are just there. Get rid of that character now. He's the character's not no longer needed, so we'll get rid of them. And it's just nihilistic, and it ends with this thing. Lucius is going to become a hero and bring justice to Rome, even though Rome's about to fall apart anyway, and he's about to lead an army in to attack Rome. And it's like, that makes no sense. And at the end of it, he's killed all the villains off without a battle, but he's now in charge of these massive armies all around Rome, and it's like, well, you kind of look like a fascist dictator rather than a deliverer of Rome. They have stuff alone with him being cynical about Rome and all the rest of it, but it's very basic stuff. It's so basic. It's like, oh god, this is crap. This is so bad. And it's hard to talk about how boring it is. I mean, there's so many scenes of just tedium, and the action scenes are just tedious. And there's a scene with a shark, where they're in a Colosseum with all this water in the Colosseum and all these sharks and these boats, and it's like, what? This is stupid. There's also a rhino, which is dumb as hell. You just watch like, I cannot believe they're doing this. And the thing is, I know basically the rhino bit was something from the first film they couldn't do. And the big battle at the end, the big thing with the two armies at the end, was something they wanted to do in the first film but they couldn't have the budget for. So it's made up of scenes they couldn't do in the first film, and these other scenes that have no weight to them, with a lead character that has no weight to them. And it just becomes a jumble of scenes, and things happen. You get all the other Gladiator scenes that are very much, yes, Ridley Scott has seen Spartacus, but he still can't do as good as Kubrick. And even if Kubrick wasn't even trying that hard in that film, Kubrick's still the master of that kind of stuff. And you have a bunch of macho scenes to show off how cool your new lead character is, but they just come across as vague. And you have all these other scenes that every time you have any momentum, you suddenly cut to another story that kills any momentum when it goes back and forward. You've got two emperors, both of whom are the actors try their best, but they're given nothing to do. It's one of those things. It's not the actor's fault. It's like they're given nothing. There's like, yeah, just ham it up. But what kind of character am I? You're a ham actor character. Yeah, but what specifics of what I'm doing in the scene doesn't matter. It's just that thing is most of the actors look like doesn't matter. Just do something. I don't care. The whole film is that feeling of just like, do we have to pay attention to any of this stuff? It just looks like they shot a first draft of a script. The script feels like it's a story that someone come up with, and it's like, okay, we now need to pare stuff down, take things out that don't really work, and find a simpler way to get them to the emotions of the scene and get the backstory a bit better and things. Oh no, we'll just shoot it. That's what it feels like. It feels like a first draft that you would look at and go, there's a lot of work to be done, and they just shot it. That's exactly how the film feels. It just feels like a first draft that you would never want to show people. But instead they've spent millions and millions on it and miscast so much of it. And I mean, the thing is, the director's miscast in this film is the big thing. Is like his heart's obviously not in it. He doesn't seem interested in it. He seems to be willing to accept anything, and none of the scenes have any passion. None of the action scenes have passion. None of the dialogue scenes have passion. Nothing's any passion. It's just this. He shot coverage and everything. They just shoved it together, and that's the film. That's like popped out. It feels like I remember Phantom Menace when a lot of the film, because George Lucas hadn't directed for a long time, a lot of that film felt like he was a director coming back into the way of things, and there's a lot of coverage shot, and some of it was a bit passionless, and Lucas got better as he went on in the other prequels, but there was that sense of a massive distance between director and the material. Yeah, same here, but this time it feels like a director who's just tired of directing and just wants to get through the day and doesn't care, and anything they think of that day will do. And so the film is just this bloody mess. It's just a horrible mess of inertia and just lack of any clue of what they're actually doing and what the aims are of any scene. Just feels like, well, we'll get to the next scene, then we'll get to the next scene, we'll get to the next scene, but what's the actual story? I don't know. This scene leads to the next scene, but what's the story? That's what the film feels like. It's horrible. It's my worst film of the year. Definitely. It was that thing of, you're watching it thinking, maybe I was a bit hard on Borderlands. That's when you know the film was really bad. So I hope you enjoyed this rant. Do not see this film ever.